Welcome into the install with Greg Cosell of NFL Films. We are now into week 14. Greg, this is not going to be the number one game on every network this week, but there is at least some compelling nature to a couple of young quarterbacks who are getting ready to play in a game. They're not playing against one another, as tends to get lost in the
Right,
dialogue
right,
around these
right.
things. But
Yeah,
certainly, I fear for Cam Ward's safety this week because Myles Garrett is a monster.
yeah. When I was watching, obviously I've seen every Titans game in detail, and I watched the Browns defense because I really kind of like what Jim Schwartz does on the defensive side of the ball from a tactical perspective. He does, by the way, make it very difficult for young quarterbacks. He can make it difficult for veteran quarterbacks as well because he's very subtle in the things he does on the back end. We talk a lot, and it's a big trend in the league, Buck, where we're seeing a lot more what we call late coverage rotation now, where defenses change the picture pre-snap to post-snap. That's become very common in the league. But what Jim Schwartz does is he does that, but he does it more subtly. So, in other words, it's not as if you see some guy running from the first level all the way to the back end. He does it subtly. So you don't know whether is this cover two? Is this cover three? I'm not really sure what it is. And of course, that changes all the rules. And a quarterback has about a millimeter of a second to know that, So he's really, really good at that. And obviously, with Myles Garrett, and it's easy to be facetious about this. Myles Garrett is arguably the best defensive player in the league on a record pace. I'm curious to see what the Titans do, how they go about pass protection, because neither tackle has played well enough where you'd feel the least bit comfortable with them in one-on-one pass protection in a longer yardage, pure pass situation. It's one thing if you call a three-step drop or, that kind of stuff where the ball's out. But in the pure pass type situations, I'm very anxious to see what the Titans do because you can't allow Latham and Moore to block 101 against Myles Garrett.
Well, and I'm assuming, Greg, and you may correct me on this if you think differently, but I'm assuming they're going to move Myles Garrett all around up front
They
against
will.
this offensive line. If I see him lined up over Corey Levin, I'm not going to be surprised for a good amount of snaps.
No, and they do that on occasion, and you make a great point there, Buck, because that is very much opponent specific. So it could well be the case that they do that. But yeah, they're going to have to do something, obviously, just to try to keep Cam Ward at the least bit to feel somewhat comfortable before he even takes the snap.
So we will see what that plan looks like for Bo Hardegree and the rest of the offensive coaching staff here in Tennessee. But Greg, I just quickly because there's not much to dissect from this game, 25-3 against the
Right.
Jags. But I do think it's important to talk about quarterback development within the context of Cam and how people, I think, make an assumption that it's going to be linear in a certain kind of way, when in the reality of his specific situation, at the very least that's just not going to be the case on a week-to-week basis.
And you make a great point there because, you have to remember one thing. We don't know what Cam Ward's going to be. Do I think that he has a chance to be a very good player? I still do. But when you're on a team that's not very good, and I think, again, not trying to be sarcastic, some might say, oh, what do you mean not very good? They stink. But, when you're on a team that's not very good, um, and really the burden is on you because, yeah, they had a couple of good runs on the first series, but for the most part this season, they've not been able to run the ball with any kind of real consistency or sustainability. So the burden always falls on the quarterback, which is what you never want it to be with a rookie quarterback on a bad team. Your point's great. It's not going to be linear. You're not going to go play to play and go, oh, he's getting better each play or he's getting better each game. That's not the way it plays out. He's going to have good plays and he's going to have some bad plays. This particular game against the Jaguars, some of his inconsistencies showed up, and they showed up a little more than you would like, but they showed up, which is doesn't mean he's not going to be better this week or better in 2 weeks or better next year. We don't know the answer to that. In fact, the thing that is going to be most fascinating, and then we can move on because I'm sure we've talked about this and we'll talk about it many, many more times, is he's almost going to be a rookie again next year because of a new coaching staff. And my guess is he'll be learning a brand new system. And that in and of itself takes time. So he's basically starting over. I mean, I don't know if I mentioned this to you. I know I talked about it with others. just look at Caleb Williams. I know they're 9-3, and but Caleb Williams is completing under 60%. The progress has been incremental. He's had great moments and he's had some tough moments, but he's on a pretty good team, obviously. So, it's you overlook that. And we're immediately inclined to think that if a team has a good record, it means the quarterback's playing great. And that's not necessarily always the case.
I think that that's just a trap that people tend to fall into optically, unless that's a team that you're watching on a week by week basis and you
Right.
understand things on a bit more of a granular level. I think that's a great point
Great
by
point.
you.
Great point. Yep.
So with that being said, I do want to touch on Shedeur briefly because we don't have a huge
Yeah.
sample size, obviously, but we have seen him now in a couple of starts, Greg, and I'd just like to get your takeaways so far.
Yeah, and again, what I'm about to say is not a function of what he's going to be. Who knows? I guess the assumption is that he'll play the rest of the season. Who knows? We don't know the answer to that. I didn't think he played particularly well this week. I thought that he's going through, in some ways, some of the same things that Cam Ward's going through, and that is just normal for a young quarterback. He's still playing at college speed. So he doesn't drop back quickly enough. He doesn't see things quickly enough. So therefore, he leaves throws on the field that are clean. I know a lot was made of Jerry Jeudy and Sanders. If Sanders played well in this game and saw it the right way and delivered the ball when he should have, Jeudy would have had 150 receiving yards. Um, he didn't process it right. It didn't register the right way. Um, but again, like I said, he's everything is just a little slow, and that's pretty normal for a young quarterback playing in the NFL because they're always in the gun. They don't really have true dropbacks, Buck, where they get back there and they plant their foot ready to deliver. Everything is just done at I almost hate to use the word, but it's true kind of a leisurely pace. And you can get away with that in college football. The NFL, you can't really get away with that. And so he'll learn that, but he needs more and more reps, just like Cam Ward needs to continue to take reps, which is why you leave him in the game when it's 25-3 at the end. You just need reps, and Sanders obviously has way fewer reps than Cam, but if you believe he can play, I don't know what this coaching staff believes at this point. It may be incomplete, but if you believe he can play, then you just got to keep playing him and let him get more and more reps and let him adjust on his own. You can talk about it, but he's got to play and feel it to adjust to the speed.
Yeah, and that's to your point. It's tough to get a read on what Kevin Stefanski and his staff kind of feel at this point in
Right.
time about Shedeur Sanders, understanding how, for lack of a better term, convoluted their quarterback situation was coming into the year and the ways that they've tried to get through it. But we know that that offense starts first and foremost with the ground game, Greg. And so they'll try and they unlike the Titans are able to run the
And,
football at a
and
at a reasonable pace and with a reasonable success rate, and that takes a lot of pressure off Shedeur.
and Judkins has looked very good this year.
Yeah.
He's I liked him coming out. He's not what you call an explosive back, but he's physical. He's got quickness in the hole. I mean, given their team, because they're not a good team either overall, he's played very, very well. They'd have to be happy with the way he's performed this year.
Uh, you brought up we talked about Jim Schwartz earlier, Greg, and I just this is an aside, not really for the purposes of our conversation, but I haven't really talked about him as a head coach, a potential head coach so far this year. I'd be curious to see what if there is any market for Jim Schwartz.
Yeah, well, he was once. I mean, so
Sure.
he's really good. I mean, I've had one of the things I always ask when I do get a chance to talk to offensive coaches is who are the defensive coaches that really you find, not problematic, but the toughest to go against. And Jim Schwartz's name always comes up. He's a guy that is highly, highly respected by offensive coaches around the league for what he does on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly he's very much respected here for his time here with the organization. Moving on to the rest of the weekend, we got a great Thursday nighter between the
Oh,
Cowboys
oh,
and the
yeah,
Lions. Greg, I don't know how much more praise could be heaped upon Dak Prescott to go blow for blow in what was one of Patrick Mahomes' better games of the season
yeah.
on Thanksgiving, and for Dak to come out the better for it. He has just been impressive all year long. What are you seeing from Dak so far this season?
He's played well pretty much all season. I mean, I think what's lost with their team is the run game's been really good too. I mean, they're a complete offense. But if I could, Buck, I think what really stands out, and I think one reason that they've turned it around, and obviously this is a huge game, is defensively they are a totally different team now than they were early in the season. People were laughing about their defense, and now since they made those trades, and over the last 3 weeks now, they have the rookie Revel playing outside corner, and he's this week he played pretty much every snap. Yeah, when I say this week, I mean Thanksgiving a week ago. I would assume that'll be the case in this game against the Lions. And they also have now played Bridges on the outside. Ty Bridges, who's 6'1", 6'2", he's got length, and that allows them to bring Bland inside to play the slot where he's so much better. He's not that good an outside corner, so he's so much better in the slot. People may remember that's where he first sort of, made his bones when we first learned about Bland. He was playing inside, and then he had the year with all the picks, which was fluky. But their defense now, with that front they have with the three tackles, that may be the best trio of defensive tackles in the league. The linebacker position has been solidified with the trade for Wilson and the return of Overshone. This defense is significantly better than it was, 7, 8 weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, if they can give that offense a chance, you understand how
Yeah,
much more viable the Cowboys become. Now, Detroit, as a matchup, is a very interesting game here, Greg. We understand that they're in a fight for this division at this
yeah.
point in time, trying to keep their spot in the postseason. Minnesota's not really going to push them at this point, but it's still pretty messy in the NFC North. What do you like about the matchup in this particular game?
Well, I think the Lions in an ideal world would like to be able to run the ball. It seems that's the way they've moved since Dan Campbell took over. I think they put Goff under center. I think he wants to be physical. Um, we don't know as we're talking on a Thursday about Amon-Ra St. Brown, who, I guess is questionable and may not go. If that's the case, it seems like Gibbs has really become their feature back. He had 20 carries a week ago on Thanksgiving. The Packers did a great job slowing him down, but we know he can break it at any time. The Lions, I mean, they're a solid football team. It's funny when teams lose people, well, what's wrong with this team? It, it's a competitive league. I don't know if there's anything wrong with the Lions. It's just they didn't run the ball great last week. Their defense, they've had so many injuries on defense, particularly in the back end. And that'll be interesting in this game because Pickens and Lamb, I mean, I would say Devontae Adams is the best in the league at getting off the press. Pickens is pretty much there. We saw that against the Chiefs. I mean, he gets off press, and boy, is he's open in a second, running those slant routes, even getting vertical. I mean, Pickens. I know that people might disagree, but Pickens is more talented than Lamb. It's he may not be as consistent down after down after down because I don't know the personalities. I don't get into that,
Sure.
but he's really a gifted receiver.
Yeah, he's been awesome to watch this year, and he's had those moments obviously in Pittsburgh. But we understand that there were some
Right,
mitigating circumstances that
right,
saw him get
right.
traded from the
Sure.
Steelers to the Cowboys. And to your point about the Lions, Greg, it's in the same way that people get caught up in linear progression from players. Like
Right,
it's not
right.
going to be the same the whole way through. Like teams are going to have moments in individual game sample sizes where I think a lot of people will just chalk that up to, oh, that's recency bias or something like that. No, those things can happen in a one game sample size.
Correct. Yeah, yeah. I mean, one thing I've always believed, and then we can talk about another game, is if you have an area of your team, and I hate to use the word weakness, but let's say an area that's not a strength, okay? Any given week in the NFL, that can be exploited depending on your opponent. I mean, look what happened to the Rams last week. Their corners are not that good, relative to the rest of their defense and relative to the rest of the NFL. So they got burned a couple of times, and that they lost a game because of it. That can happen in the league. We're in the NFL. Even teams you don't think, and I know nobody takes the Carolina Panthers seriously. They're 7-6, but the point is they were able to hit some big plays in the pass game at critical moments against a defense that, for the most part, is very good, but corners not their strength.
Yeah, I mean, at your own risk, don't take the Panthers seriously. They're playing pretty solid
Right.
football.
Yeah, but
Uh,
I mean that's what happens in the league. If you have an area that's not, a strength, any given week that can be exploited.
yeah, I don't imagine there's too many 4-8 teams that make it on the matchup show. I would have to imagine that this Bills Bengals game is going to be on the matchup show.
Yes, it will be. And it's a fascinating, obviously, Burrow is Burrow, there's everybody knows that. And he changes the dynamic of any game because he's so good. the Bills are one of the most fascinating teams in the league because they must truly believe, they're telling us this by how they play. They must truly believe that their receivers are bad because they've got the most physically gifted quarterback in the league and they basically don't throw the ball very much by choice. They don't want to throw the ball. So they clearly believe that they're just not good enough at the receiver position, even with Josh Allen, that they just don't want to have a passing game unless they absolutely need it, you know. And, you know, their run game, look, Aaron Kromer is their O-line coach, and I know he's the one who designs the run game, and he's been doing it for 23, 24 years. He's one of the absolute best. They have so many run game concepts. The game and the opponent dictate what they focus on in a given game. But obviously the run game has been terrific. I mean, look, they lead the NFL in rushing, and who would have thought James Cook would have 231 carries, and there's still what 5 games to go? Yeah, because the
Yeah.
Bills are 8-4, so they have 5 games to go. I mean, he might get over 300 carries, which I feel bad because he's not a big guy. You wonder how many years he can do this.
Sure. It's not everybody's Derrick Henry, and even that would be a stretch for Derrick Henry. You know
That's
what I'm
right.
saying?
That's right.
Just a quick aside off this game because the Bengals beat the Ravens to come back, and I understand,
Yep.
5 fumbles, it's going to be impossible for any offense to
Right.
to get anything done. But Greg, I wonder what you make of Lamar right now. It's a critical game against the Steelers for the lead in the
Yeah.
AFC North this coming weekend, and we understand there's a little bit of uncertainty around the Steelers right now. But what's going on with Lamar Jackson in your estimation?
Yeah, it's a hard figure. I was saying this to someone that, sometimes I look at him and he looks fine. Other times I feel like, oh, he's not really moving the way we know he can move. Now, he had the hamstring injury. I don't know whether that's still a factor. I don't want to get caught up in saying, well, he lost a step. People automatically jump to that conclusion. We don't know that. I thought in this past game last week, the game they lost to Cincinnati, he missed some throws just with poor ball location that he normally doesn't miss. I mean, he's been a really good pocket quarterback over these last 2, 3 years, and clearly one of the best quarterbacks in the league. That's not in question. But he's just not playing with the same kind of consistency throwing the football that we've seen. So it's a hard question to answer. I don't know why that is, but that's what the tape shows. Clearly, he's not having those special, running plays that we've seen in the past. So I don't know if he truly has lost a step or if it's just the injury is still sort of getting better, and he's not quite there. Don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
Um, I feel the same way about Derrick Henry. Sometimes I look at him and go, oh, it's okay. And other times I feel like, oh, that burst is not quite there. Even on that touchdown run last week, I felt like toward the end of it, and you probably saw it when he, got to like the 15-yard line or so, he got taken down. He got to the end zone, but he got taken down.
Yeah.
Like I don't think Derrick Henry 2, 3 years ago would have got taken down, but maybe I'm wrong. But I wouldn't be surprised if you see a little more of Mitchell playing. He's not going to play 50 snaps, but he's got some juice to him and some speed, and it would not surprise me if you see him out there a little bit more.
Yeah, and frankly, I'm surprised the Ravens aren't leaning more on that run game because of the two of them, and they have
Yeah,
the ability to, they're not interchangeable by any stretch of the imagination, but they do give them a different dimension that it doesn't seem like the Ravens have leaned
yep.
into at this point in the season. A lot of great games all over the board, Greg. The NFL Matchup Show will get you ready, of course, on Saturday mornings. You can set your DVR. You can catch it on ESPN Plus and watch it on demand. You can catch it early Saturday mornings. As I mentioned, what pieces will you be highlighting this week?
I'm going to take a look at Jordan Love, who, by the way, I mean, just to throw something out, which probably I'm sure no one's aware of, they lead the NFL in third down conversion rate. And on 3rd and 7 plus, think about this, Buck, 3rd and 7 plus, they're converting over 43%. That's crazy.
That is
And
insane.
that's insane.
I see a lot of 3rd and 7 plus covering the team
I
that I
know.
do. It's for
And
43%
and
is unheard of.
and amazingly, the Titans are not converting at 43%.
Yeah, that's
But yeah,
breaking news.
so I'm going to take a look at Jordan Love. I'm doing the Jag. There's two defenses that have played a lot better recently than I think that people are aware. The Ravens and the Jaguars, and I'm going to take a look at both of them in the matchup show. Two big games, obviously Jaguars, Colts in your division, and we talked about the Ravens and the Steelers, and then I'm going to look at the Bills' run game. I mean, that's really what the Bills are right now. They're a running football team on offense, and that's who they are. That's who they want to be.
One game that you didn't mention, but I'm fascinated
Texans,
by it,
Chiefs.
Yeah, Texans Chiefs is going to be critical. The Chiefs right
And
now sit with a 40% chance to make the postseason, which is not a
and by
scenario
the
that we
way,
see them in very often.
I don't know what's going to happen, Thursday or Friday, but yesterday, Wednesday, normally the biggest practice day of the week, Jawan Taylor did not practice and Trey Smith did not practice. So now you're talking about, and we know Josh Simmons went on IR. So can you imagine if you're playing with two backup tackles against Hunter and Anderson? And by the way, with backup guards, put a backup guard, because everybody talks about Hunter and Anderson, but the interior of that Texans D line is really good too. So it's going to be a fascinating game. I mean, I think we know Mahomes can be special anytime making those outside of structure plays, and he seems to be making more and more of those. That seems to be his game now more than anything else.
Yeah, it's he's going to have to do something spectacular because he is going to be
Yeah.
up against it on Sunday against Houston. Greg, appreciate your time as always. Enjoy week 14, my friend, and we'll look forward to doing it again next Thursday.
Thanks, Buck. Appreciate it.